And Kirk's 100% correct, and Texas should go in front of Alabama.
Absolutely.
They should. There's no one that would push back on that. But what you're telling people to an extent is, hey, you know what? Just schedule Texas Tech in the preseason. Because Texas Tech, that's who Oregon played. And Oregon went on the road and looked ugly in that game, by the way. Got a late touchdown that made it look a little better. But if you look at the strength of record, it's not comparable. Alabama and Texas are both operating right now pretty well. I wouldn't say that they're passing the eye test with flying colors, but they don't have the luxury of playing Cal. And I'm not trying to take shots at Cal. I'm not trying to take shots at Colorado and these other teams. I'm not. But I just think why is the committee using resume to define Ohio State as number 1? We're using eye test to define Georgia and Michigan as 2 and 3. We're using resume plus eye test to define Florida State at 4. And then we like Washington, but they got holes to put them at 5.
There's no consistency.
There's no consistency.
Okay.
Welcome to the In Our Humble Opinion podcast, the show where no topic is off limits. Sit back, relax, and enjoy a wide variety of interesting topics: sports, gaming, the paranormal, and everything in between. All opinions given are respectfully and humbly our own. Now here's your hosts, Jacob Cook and Brantley Weatherford.
Hello, and welcome back to another week, another episode, hallelujah, of In Our Humble Opinion. I am Brantley Weatherford, and of course, as always, I'm joined by the great, mythical Jacob Cook. Jacob, how are you?
The man, the myth, the legend. Yes, I am also here this week. Thank you so much, Brent, for the kind words. I appreciate it very much.
Yes,
And I think we got a good one. I think we got a good episode.
We got something to talk about. I know that.
Yes, we do. So, not really a dedicated topic per se, but we definitely have some football we want to discuss on the show. And there's a few other things that might make the conversation. We're just sort of going off of just the big news, and then wherever it takes us after that is what we'll discuss. But yeah, I'm very happy to be joining you, Brant. It's good to be back.
Well, it's always great to be back, Jacob. It's one thing if we could say this was the first edition, but it's not. It's we are well into the podcast series. Jacob, in the beginning, I just want to take a stroll back down memory lane about 2 years ago. No, not
Sure.
quite 2 years, but we were struggling coming up with the name, and then we came up with the name, and then I remember we were looking through like Apple Podcasts or iTunes, something like that. I can't remember. And we saw another podcast called Our Humble Opinion, I believe. But they kind of fell off. They haven't. No, excuse me. It wasn't a podcast. We were talking about naming the podcast. Well, it was some golf term.
Oh, yes. It was par for the course, I think.
Par for the course. Yes. Par for the course. And we found another one on one of those streaming sites called Par for the Course. And they did like 10 episodes and quit. So we are still going. We're still par for the course, and we're humble about it. Hello.
Yeah, we were, it's actually an interesting topic. When we were kind of conceptualizing the idea of what we wanted to do, it was more of like a sport-oriented show with a little bit of gaming mixed in, but mostly, we were going to talk about sports for the most part. So that's sort of where that came from. And didn't really work out. And then we just decided, why not just talk about whatever, not really categorize ourselves into one area, and just sort of whatever's on our mind, which I've actually enjoyed a lot. I think it's worked out really well for us. So to all of our supporters who are listening and who have continued to tune in week in and week out, we definitely do appreciate you very, very much. And I think, we can't say thank you enough. I'm sure it gets old from time to time, but our gratitude is very sincere, and we really do appreciate it.
We do. And I'll tell you guys, I know lately we've been doing a bunch of sports, gaming, back and forth, hodgepodges, but we'll always bring you good content. Don't get me wrong. I mean, you're going to hear me today. Hello. talk about some controversy. And by the time this episode airs, I might not have that controversy anymore. We'll see. But
Yeah, but
we're going to get some
also
more topics going.
yeah, but also too, Brent, and I don't want to go down this rabbit hole per se, but I mean, you look around the world and it's just, metaphorically speaking, the world's just on fire. And we could talk about, a deeper, more serious topic all day long. But at the end of the day, it just becomes exhausting to get through the week, when you're working full time, and then all the news is just so negative and so depressing. And then, I want this podcast to be like the podcast I listen to. That's different. That's something that takes my mind off the stresses of day-to-day life. So,
I agree.
like sports and stuff like that really helps me get through difficult times. And I love talking about it with you and with my other, with our other friends. And, I like it to be an outlet for other people who listen to our show to kind of escape from the difficulties of the world these days.
Yeah, I agree. And not that we don't touch on those topics from here and there. I mean, we touched on it a few weeks ago, but yeah, it's nice to listen. I'm like you, Jacob. I like sitting down and just putting on something to listen to that's entertaining and not necessarily has to do with politics, war, any of that junk. So that's what we're trying to do here. We're reaching out there and we're opening our topics wide, and we're going to keep on pushing. Yes, we are.
And Brad, I know you had a passionate speech to go on here about college football, and I'll give you the floor here momentarily. But I did want to ask you about this breaking news. As we are recording this, the Big Ten has banned Jim Harbaugh from the sideline for the remainder of the season. Regular
Hallelujah.
season, I should say.
I'm just now seeing that myself.
And I must admit, this is a story that is incredibly boring to me. I don't care at all. But just the fact that there was enough evidence to move forward with a suspension is surprising to me. Or perhaps it isn't. I really haven't kept up with the story much. Like I said, it's just one of those really boring, dumb stories that I don't care about it really. But
it is interesting though that since this is a so-called science, and for people who don't understand, yes, people steal signs all the time, but you can't actively send somebody to a game and record just to steal signs. It's in the rule books. I know it happens in sports. Just telling you based on the rules. I don't know much about it other than that, Jacob. It is interesting, though, that over the past 2 years since this whole thing started, they started doing extremely well, like much better than before. And what is funny, though, it hasn't helped them in the playoffs at all. So,
well, that's what I'm more curious about. Does it go back to the previous few seasons, or was it something that they got caught doing this year?
I think it goes back for at least 3 seasons.
Okay. Well, maybe it's more significant than I give it credit. Then I thought it was something that was happening this year.
No. It's past seasons. I know at least last year, and I think the year before.
Okay. Well, okay. Fair enough. But Jim Harbaugh was out for the first several games at the start of the year, if I'm not mistaken, and it didn't matter at all. Of course, I know they were playing cupcakes, but still, I don't think it's going to matter against Penn State. I don't think, I don't think it's going to be a big deal.
Well, actually, Penn State's favored. According to this predictor, Penn State is favored by a whole percentage point.
Wow.
Isn't that something?
That is.
Where is the game? That needs to be. It is in. Okay, it's in Pennsylvania. All right. Well, that makes a little bit more sense. But even still, I'm kind of with you. Like, what?
Yeah.
That being said, Jacob, does it matter? I don't know. Has it mattered? No. And that leads us into a discussion that needs to be said. Okay? It needs to be said. These playoff rankings that we have seen have been absolute garbage.
Yeah.
Absolute garbage. All right. I'm going to start. And now I am an Alabama fan. You can come, oh, you're just crying because you're Bama. You should have beat Texas. Okay. I'm going to get to that. But let's start with Texas. Alabama loses to Texas at the start of the year at home by 10 points. Some say it's a blowout. Some say it's just 10 points. Take it, leave it how you would. They dropped from 4 to 13 in the rankings. Since then, Alabama has beaten 3 top 25 teams, one of them being Ole Miss, whose only loss is to Alabama. And they have barely moved. Okay? Now you say, well, that's because Texas hasn't lost. Texas hasn't been. Okay, all right. Well, let's get to Texas. Here's how the playoff ranking should be right now, Jacob. Georgia should be number 1. Not because they have a better resume or whatnot. Because if you want to base it on resume, then I'll get to that. But Georgia should be number 1 because they haven't lost in, 28 games? That matters.
It's something, yeah.
That should matter. Okay. I can see Ohio State being 2. I will give them that. Ohio State 2. Fair. That's fine. All right. Michigan should not be in the top 5. They have played nobody of relevance. In fact, you know what I'm going to look up, Jacob? I'm going to look up the college football strength of schedule this year, as it is right now. But Michigan should not be in the top 4. Sue me. Sue me. They should not be in the top 4. Okay? They have beaten nobody. Not a ranked team. Their strength of schedule right now, Jacob, I got to scroll so far, I don't even see them. Where is their strength of schedule? Good Lord.
What would you say is like your if you had to categorize in order of relevance the things that you put the most emphasis on when ranking a team?
Strength of schedules and wins. Michigan's strength of schedule is 70.
Strength of schedule and notable victories. Is that your
notable
2?
Victories? And
that's like your top
Michigan
2.
Play. Yeah.
Okay. I'm just trying to paint the clear picture here.
Strength of schedule and notable victories. Because that's the whole reason TCU. I'll get to TCU bone last year. But strength of schedule, Michigan's at 4. Why are they ahead of Texas? I get they're undefeated, but why are they ahead of Texas? Why are they ahead of Washington? Why are they ahead of Oregon? Why are they ahead of anybody when their strength of schedule is garbage?
I think there is part of the analysis that's hard for casual fans to really understand and appreciate. Not that we're casual fans, but I'm just suggesting that I think roster composition matters. And I think when you look at the roster of each of these teams, there's first and second round draft picks all over the place.
Okay, but it shouldn't be based on roster composition. It should be based on wins. Wins and losses.
They are undefeated.
Against nothing. They're strength of schedule. Yeah, it'd be easy to be undefeated against Panera Bread State.
But this is the thing, though, and I'm going to be the devil's advocate here.
Be the devil's advocate.
This is my pushback on the argument that they haven't played anybody. Because whenever teams, and this has been Alabama's problem for a long time, the national media always, whenever, and this is what Skip Bayless used to do and what probably he would still do if they talked about it on this show. I don't know. I don't watch it anymore. This is what Colin's done in the past, Colin Cowherd, where Alabama is favored in every game that they're in a particular season. Okay, let's take the year Mac Jones was our QB, right? We were one of the best teams in the history of the sport. Every single game that we played, or that Alabama played, they were favored. Okay. And if they didn't blow out the opponent by 50, then it was a problem. And the sky was falling. And what's wrong with this Alabama team? But they were winning every single one of their games.
But
and yet it wasn't good enough for people.
The schedule was good.
It was a good schedule, and Michigan up to this point hasn't played a very difficult schedule. But here's the thing, though. In my opinion, they're doing everything that is within those players' power. They can't schedule somebody else. The players have no control over that. And they're going out there against the schedule that was laid before them, and they're blowing everybody out. As well they should. But
so what? Boise State did that for years, and they're like, well, your strength of schedule is junk,
yes,
so you're not getting in.
But I guess my point is that if they were not doing that, we would still be criticizing them because we would be saying they're a horrible team. They can barely beat the garbage that's on their schedule.
Exactly.
So there's no way for them to create leverage for themselves because If they do win by a lot, oh, they're playing an easy schedule.
Well,
If they don't win by a lot, well, they're not a very good team. So, like, there's
here's how
no
you
way for
create
them to
leverage.
create value.
Instead of playing
Okay.
East Carolina your first game of the year, play a big name school. Instead of playing UNLV, play a big name school. Buff up
Well,
your
I mean,
schedule because you're a
Alabama
conference. Your
and Auburn have
conference is
played
junk, though.
cupcakes on their schedule.
Yeah, but the conference of the SEC, you could argue, is much better than the normals. The average team of the SEC is better than the average teams of the Big Ten.
I would also, I don't disagree with you on that, but I would also argue, Brant, that Michigan has their best teams remaining on their schedule, and Alabama does not.
Yay!
Alabama's
Okay.
best wins are 2 wins: Ole Miss, LSU.
And
That's it.
And
That's it.
Tennessee.
Fine, I'll give you
That's
Tennessee.
a top 25. What are you talking about? That's a
I'm talking
better team than that's a better team than any team Michigan's played this year. And you want to say
I'll
Penn
give you
State?
Tennessee.
Penn State is You were just
They
saying,
are.
oh, Michigan should destroy them.
They should. They should. We'll see.
But
See,
if that
we're gonna
happens,
get to
we're going
find
to give
out.
them credit for it.
I'll give them credit.
No, if they're an AT, I ain't giving them credit.
I think they are an
And
well,
that needs
okay.
to,
I'll
who has
put it
Penn
this way.
State played?
I'll put it this way. Ohio State made them look like a bleh team.
They lost 20-12. How was that bleh?
They scored in
It was an
garbage time.
8-point. Garbage time is still a score. And even if they didn't score in garbage time, it was what, 20-7? 20-6? That's not a blowout. That's not impressive. Come on.
I think the game was a lot different in terms of the score, making it seem closer. I think and
Michigan
Ohio
should
State
not be
and
the-
Michigan will be able to play, and then we'll know a lot more about each team. If Michigan
but
goes
that's
and
the
wins,
problem. That's the problem I have with the Big Ten. Ohio State and Michigan play nobody all year, but they're like, oh, at the end of the year, though, they have a big matchup. They'll determine if they go to playoffs. Why should that determine if they go to the playoffs if they haven't played anybody all year? And we see it in the playoffs because they lose every time, except for 1 year in 2014. They lose every time. Why? Because they play nobody the whole year. They get credit. Last year, they're talking about, oh, Ohio State might be the best team in the nation. When they hadn't done anything.
But honestly, though, like the semifinals last season with Ohio State and Georgia, that was the closest game Georgia had played all year.
Okay, well, you want to talk about the score being closer than what it indicates? That's one of those games. Georgia had more total yards, held them to much. The stats for Georgia were way in favor. So according to the stats, it was a blowout. So
I don't.
Your logic, that's a blowout.
Well, it's decisive.
Georgia blew Ohio State out last year, based on your logic.
Well, what I will say is that in that game, I remember this very clearly. Brock Bowers. I was trying to say Brock Purdy from the 49ers, but Brock Bowers, he didn't have a catch until like the halfway point through the third quarter. And that's like the best player on both teams. Like that defensive scheme was impressive, and they hung in there. And I mean, it wasn't necessarily like a nail biter per se. And Georgia definitely did statistically, and the eye test would prove that they were the better team. But it was still a more competitive game than TCU was. I mean, that was awful.
TCU, but Ohio State and Michigan, now to Ohio State's credit, they've had a better schedule. I would say a much better schedule than Michigan this year.
Yeah, up to this point, yeah.
Yeah, up to this point. But again, every year it's the game. Prime time, Fox, Michigan, Ohio State, the game. Every year.
Big
and
game.
People look at it like, oh, this is going to determine a playoff team. Why is that determining a playoff team? Why? When they play nobody all
the
year.
best team in a Power 5 conference.
No, because they're overrated every year in a
No,
Power.
if they're undefeated
5.
in a Power 5 conference, they're going to go into the playoff.
Playoffs? Jacob, they're junk in the Power 5 conference.
What?
Their conference is junk. I said it. Dookie.
Florida State's isn't any better.
No, it's not. But I'll get to Florida State. All I'm saying is, I'll give Ohio State their ranking for now. I think Georgia should be 1, Ohio State 2, but regardless, Michigan should not be in the top 5. Not in the top 5. I'm just saying.
I mean, if they go through the final few weeks of this season and they get 2 losses, then they're not going to be in the playoff. If they get 1 loss,
good. They
they're
don't
probably
deserve
out.
it.
Well, I'm just saying, like, they have to be undefeated.
Here's another thing. What if they
on that
go
selection
undefeated all
Tuesday.
year and play no ranked teams? Does that mean they should get in because they're in the Power 5?
If they're undefeated at the end of the year and they're a Big Ten champion, yes.
Let's move on from them.
Yes, they will be in the playoff, and they should be in the
Talk
playoff.
about Crapican.
What Brantley really wants to talk about is a team sitting at number 6.
I'll get there. I want to go through each team. Okay. Florida State. Another thing. Now, I would say they've had a better schedule than Michigan, but not much better. I think Washington should be ahead of Florida State. I think it should be Georgia, Ohio State, Washington, Florida State, and then since Michigan's the last undefeated team, they can have their 5th spot. But they're undefeated because they're playing junk. Okay, but I digress. Let's get to the main problem I have, Jacob. And you know this because I've been griping about it for weeks.
Yes, you have.
Oregon, great Oregon, who has played one 500 team and beat them this year. One team over 500 win is sitting at number 6. How are they at number 6 when Texas, who has 1 loss as well, but has a ranked 7 strength of schedule, much better win than Oregon. Any win Oregon has. Don't give me Utah. Utah's crap. Don't give me Utah. Much better win than any Oregon team. How is Oregon at 6 and Texas not behind them? And then, how is Alabama not ahead of Oregon as well when they've played much better teams than Oregon? Tell me. Oregon's only game against a good team was to Washington, and they lost. I don't care if they look better now. They lost. They should not be ahead of Texas or Alabama.
I'm not necessarily... I don't necessarily disagree with you on this. What I will offer to you as an unsatisfactory explanation is I think eye test and roster composition are heavily influencing
Alabama and Texas have a better roster composition than Oregon. Get out of here with that junk.
You could make the argument, but I do think, based on some of the scouting and mock drafts that I've seen, Oregon's going to have several players drafted in the first round.
We should not be basing it off roster. That's the first problem with the committee. Second of all, eye test against who? Against who?
Well, whenever they... Now, a lot of people in the audience, including yourself, are going to laugh at this, but at the time the game was played, which I think is important, both Colorado and Oregon had everything in the world to play for, and they just got absolutely... Colorado, got absolutely smoked at home, or rather on the road at Eugene. I think we saw that. Now it's obviously
Colorado's 4-5, Jacob.
I understand that, but at the time the game was played, they were both undefeated.
Because if we're going to fault Alabama and SEC teams, which the media does every year, they haven't played anybody good, and we say, well, at the time they were good, and they say, no, that doesn't counter. We're going to do the same thing with Oregon.
Now, see, I have always defended the teams. Like Notre Dame, I give Ohio State a ton of credit for winning the game at Notre Dame this year because at the time the game was played, it was a massive game for both teams.
It was. I'll give you that.
Like you have to take that context into account. Whenever, this is going back several years, but whenever Alabama and FSU played in the opening, the season opener, and they were like 1-3, and then after Alabama beat them and FSU went on to have a rather mediocre season, to me, Alabama never got the credit they deserve for beating the number 3 team in the nation at the time with everything in the world to play for. And I can't stand that because it matters. Context around the game should matter. a lot.
But Colorado was overhyped and overrated from this. They beat a TCU team who is junk, might I add. Then they beat a terrible Nebraska team. They're like, oh, it's Oregon, it's Colorado. And they got blown out. Why does that matter? Colorado was never good.
I'm not saying it's the best win on their schedule, not by a long shot, but I'm just saying it is something to take into consideration.
The only reason Colorado got ranked after they beat TCU is because of all the hype around the program. That's it. If it had been just a normal program with no hype around it, they would not have been ranked. They would have dropped TCU out of the rankings, and Colorado wouldn't have been ranked. That does not matter. Does not matter. That game was garbage. That's not a good win. They're 4-5. They lost to a 1-4 Stanford, Jacob.
I know that. I'm just the point that I was trying to make wasn't that it was the best win on their schedule, but at the time the game was played, that game was rather impressive. Moving forward, they go to a Washington.
They lose.
Which had, at the time, the two Heisman leading candidates, I guess maybe outside of Caleb Williams, if he was still relevant at the time. I can't remember.
He was.
And they lost by 3 in a game that statistically they were better. They just came up a little bit short on some questionable coaching, on a few fourth downs that they probably should have kicked field goals. And if they do kick field goals, they probably win the game.
But they didn't, and they lost. And guess what?
That's the same thing that LSU argued when they beat us 6-9. Just saying.
Yeah, but then we went in and blew them out.
And then we went into the championship game and destroyed them. And I think what's going to happen in the Pac-12 championship game is Oregon is going to prove that they were the better team, and they're going to dominate Washington in the Pac-12 game.
Oregon's going to get upset before them.
If they don't, if they are a 12 or 11-1, 12-1, whatever it is, Pac-12 champion. See, this is the problem. And you and I can sit here and argue about it all day long. The committee has made it abundantly clear that if Oregon wins out, then they will be represented in the. There will be a Pac-12 champion in the championship if they are a one-loss team, which means Texas has to lose for Alabama to have any chance at getting into the playoffs.
Here's what I see. If Alabama wins out and beats an undefeated 30-0 Georgia team, then Alabama should be in the playoffs. I don't care about the Texas head-to-head. Texas can go in the playoffs too. Oregon should not be ahead of either of those teams. I don't care if they go in and beat Washington. I don't, because their resume is garbage. And I say that because the only reason TCU got into the playoffs last year, they lost their conference championship game. They lost it. They were no longer undefeated. The only reason they got in is because, well, look how many ranked teams and the schedule they played to get there. That is the only reason. So if we're going to give that to TCU, as we saw was a cupcake team in the championship, if we're going to do that for TCU, we're going to do it for Alabama. Alabama's strength of schedule is 10 times better than Oregon's. Alabama sits at 2 for the strength of schedule. Oregon sits at 61.
You know, I guess I should make that myself clear. Alabama has control of their own destiny at this point in the season. They just have to win out. I agree with you. If they win out, they will represent the SEC in the playoffs.
They should.
There's no doubt in my mind.
They're not in. If Oregon and Texas win out and Alabama wins out, Alabama should be in over at least Oregon. Texas could go in because they got the head-to-head. But Alabama should be in over Oregon. I don't want to hear arguments about it because there's no reason.
Would they ever do something like this? Let's say Texas wins out.
Mm-hmm.
Let's say Michigan wins out. Okay, they win all the games on their schedule. So they're in. Both of those teams would be in the playoff. Mm-hmm. Alabama wins out. So would they ever put Georgia in over a one-loss Oregon team?
No.
So it would be...
Georgia lost on their last game of the year. So why should they be rewarded for that?
Well, Alabama's lost in the championship game and been represented. Or they lost the last game of the year, I think, one time, right? And then they got in. They were a one-loss team.
Yeah, and, well, yes, but the other teams behind them were not good. Auburn would have a case for it but they got absolutely blasted in the SEC championship. So when they got blasted by Georgia, their chances were gone.
Well, actually, what about this situation? What about everything I said was just true, and FSU was undefeated?
Well, well, that's the thing. That's the thing. If Michigan or Ohio State wins out, excuse me, one of them's going to be in. Okay. If FSU wins out, they're in. If
And then-
Alabama wins out and beats Georgia, they should be in. If Texas and Oregon went out, Texas should be in over Oregon, or Alabama in over Oregon. That's how I feel about it. Based
So,
on schedule.
see, that's just oh my gosh, that is
If we're gonna say that scheduling matters and then reward teams with the crappy schedule like Oregon, then everybody every year should just schedule cupcakes all year until the final game of the year and be like, well, I mean, we're undefeated. We do da 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 da. Because that's garbage. Texas and Alabama both have a better strength of schedule and both have better wins than Oregon, and yet Oregon's ahead of them. It makes no sense.
that type of chaos is something that I really somewhat root for, but at the same time, it's going to feel so bad if you're the team that's left out of that equation.
Oregon should be that team right now. Right
But if
now.
they win out, though, they beat Washington.
If Alabama wins out, they beat a 30-0 Georgia.
I'm not
If
saying
Texas
I'm not
wins
saying,
out-
but I'm not saying you kick out Alabama and put in Oregon. I'm just saying like FSU versus Oregon in my mind.
I think it'd be a slaughter. I think one team would slaughter the other. Which
FSU would slaughter Oregon.
No, I'm saying it depend on the day. One day.
Oh, I see what you're saying. I see what you're saying. So I mean, like, to me, that's where it's interesting. A one-loss Oregon or undefeated Florida State, and of course, the majority of people would say, "Oh, that's easy. You put in the one-loss, or you put in the undefeated team." But I don't think they've beaten anybody of note besides LSU.
Well, LSU's not even know, but they beat. Well, the time it happened matters, Jacob. They beat number 16 Duke, and Duke is 6-3. They beat Clemson. Let me refrain from that one. They beat LSU and they beat Duke, and they have a chance to beat a 6-3 Miami tomorrow.
That Clemson win looks a little bit better since they beat Notre Dame.
A little bit, not much, but a little bit.
And that actually detracts from Ohio State's resume too. That Notre Dame went on and lost to a pretty bad Clemson team.
I don't disagree that I think Florida State's overrated with you, but
yeah, I mean, I
as of right now,
have they played Miami yet?
They play them tomorrow, but I think Florida State's schedule right now is better than Michigan's.
Didn't they almost lose to a Boston College?
They did. Yep.
So I don't know. I mean, they haven't really passed the eye test for me at all. So,
well, neither has Michigan. I don't care. They're blowing out Starbucks. Don't matter to me. To me, out of Oregon, Texas, and Alabama, Texas has the best resume right now. Okay, they beat Alabama at Alabama. They blew out Kansas. Say what you will about Kansas, but right now Kansas is sitting at 7-2, and they beat Oklahoma.
No, Kansas has become a formidable program.
Yeah, they blew out Kansas 40-14. Wasn't even close. All right, they beat K-State. Now, it wasn't overtime. But they beat K-State.
They were the conference champions, though.
Last year, yes.
Yeah,
correct.
So that should be something to note.
And we gave Missouri props for beating a ranked Kansas State team, so I'm going to give Texas props for beating them as well. So, to me, Texas has the best resume right now. I think between Alabama and Texas, who has the worst loss, I would say Texas has the worst loss because they lost to Oklahoma, who has slid. But that's only because they beat Alabama, so we have a better loss because we lost to a better team in terms of resume, in my opinion. They don't really play anybody great coming up. I mean, they have a pretty easy schedule on the way out.
I think, though, if you're an Alabama fan right now, you still have control of your own destiny. And for the first time, this is the first time I felt this way after watching them play all season long. It seems like this team is peaking at the right time.
Yeah.
Like they're playing their best football now. And they just destroyed an LSU team that has given them fits over the past several years.
I mean, right now.
And these are the games that going into them in the past, I was always apprehensive. I'm like, oh God, which team are we going to get? Are we going to get the team we saw against Texas that's unorganized and turnovers and all this other nonsense? Or are we going to get a team that we saw against them this past Saturday, where they just, in the second half, played very, very well?
Yeah.
So I think this team is really starting to find its identity. Jalen Milroe looks way more comfortable. He's still not a great thrower of the football, but his legs are making a big difference right now.
Yeah.
And I think that they'll take care of business against Kentucky. They should beat Auburn. And whenever they get to Atlanta, I think the Dogs are more vulnerable than perhaps they have been in recent years. So I think they have a good chance to win out. But I guess we'll see.
I would say careful with Auburn. Careful with Auburn.
Yeah, I mean it is at home. And look, I'm sure it's been well documented on this podcast. I've jumped ship. I am a big Auburn fan, but I have to go by my rule. Alabama has more to lose in this game. I have to root for them to some degree. I mean, I would love Auburn to win.
Your rule or my rule, Jacob?
Well, I mean, I think we both sort of adopted it, right?
Yeah, we did.
I mean, I'm not going to lie. It would be a huge recruiting plus if we beat our in-state rival, but I will.
If we were both undefeated right now, I'd be going for Auburn.
Oh yeah, me too. I want them to win a national championship so bad.
If we were 11, Auburn was 11-1 and Alabama was 12-0, I'd be going for Auburn.
But I mean, I at the start of the season, obviously, you put an L beside Alabama if you're an Auburn fan right now. So,
well, I just yes, if Alabama wins out, I think they should be in. If Texas wins out, yeah, they should be in. See, if Bama wins out, Georgia falls. Unless they lose one of the last 3 games, which they could. They play Ole Miss
what if
tomorrow.
it's close though? Like, what if Alabama wins on like a final second field goal, and the whole game has been competitive? I mean, are they really going to kick out a 2-time national champion because they lost on the final second field goal?
Well, I guess the question is: are you going to keep all those other teams out who have one loss? Because Georgia, they're 2-time champion. They lost on the final play.
It's going to be that. We could be in for the most chaotic finish to a football season that I can remember.
Yeah,
like
well,
there was
maybe
some
2007, but
yeah, I mean there was some controversy. Well, I mean like in the playoff era.
Oh yeah.
I mean there was some controversy when Bama got in because they didn't play in the SEC championship game, and that's the year I think Auburn represented the West.
They did,
and then they got a PG friendly way of they got their butts kicked. And then Alabama went and represented. And to Alabama's credit, they went on to win the national championship. So
they did.
I mean, it's not like there was a lot of outrage at the time, but they proved why they were there.
They did. I mean, if everybody right now wins out, and keep in mind, Ole Miss plays Georgia tomorrow. Ole Miss's only loss is to Alabama. So,
yeah, but this is you know what I have sort of an issue with, and this isn't really the fault of Georgia, but it is sort of annoying. All of their big games are at home.
Jacob, I would agree with you, but all of Alabama's big games this year have also been at home.
Well, I mean, I understand that, but it just feels like every time there's like a big, like when they played Notre Dame, that like a year or two ago, where was that game played? Oh yeah, it was in Athens. Whenever like Tennessee had all the momentum in the world after they had beaten Alabama last year, where was that game? Oh yeah, it was in Athens. It just feels like every time there's a good team that has a chance to beat them, the game's in Athens.
You're not wrong. They do travel to Tennessee this year, though.
We'll see. We'll see about that. I do remember this was a long time ago. This was pre playoff. I'm pretty sure.
Playoffs.
But Alabama, it was really weird to see this, but they had a game scheduled in Athens. And I think this is back when Mark Richt was still the coach. And Georgia was good. I mean, they were a good team. This is I think this was one of the Aaron Murray teams.
Was this when they did the blackout?
Maybe it was. I just remember Alabama went in there and just blew them out.
Yeah. That would have been 2008.
Okay, maybe that's what I'm thinking of. But the game really wasn't that competitive. It was like 38 to 17 or something like that.
41-30 the final, but the whole game it was 31-0 at half.
Okay, maybe that's what I'm remembering. I just remember dang, this is great. This is amazing. That's like the last time I remember them being embarrassed at home. Maybe they have been, but the point was I was looking at their schedule the past couple of years, and it just feels like in Athens.
Yeah, I can't use that excuse this year because all of Alabama's big games have been in Tuscaloosa, but last year they weren't. But Georgia's were, so it's like I see what you're saying. All I'm saying though, Jacob, is if Georgia wins out and Alabama wins out and beats Georgia, I think Georgia should drop out of the playoffs. I'm sorry. That's how it is.
Yeah, who would their best win be?
Let me look at their schedule.
I think their best win would be
Ole Miss.
Would Ole Miss be better than at Tennessee?
That's a good question.
Because Auburn made Ole Miss look pretty average.
Also to Texas A&M, but they're still 9-1 or 8-1.
They are. I think Ole Miss is meh.
They might be mad, but they're still 8-1.
Well, that's the same thing at Oregon. They might be meh, but they're still 8-1.
Yeah, but they've played ranked teams.
They have.
Oregon hasn't played ranked anything except one, and they lost. Ole Miss, and you're going to laugh at this, but Ole Miss beat Tulane, who is ranked.
No, I actually respect Tulane.
They're 8-1. Their only loss is to Ole Miss, and they beat Caleb Williams last year in the bowl game.
Yes, that was Bradley. We picked it. You and I.
We
picked
did. We did. That was a classic, and it was in Tulane.
Yes, it was.
They beat LSU, that high-powered offense. I mean, if they pull off, shock the world. Here's another thing: if they shock the world tomorrow, and Alabama wins out, Ole Miss doesn't go to the SEC championship.
Oh, you mean Georgia?
No. Ole Miss. If Alabama wins out and Ole Miss wins out, Alabama still goes ahead of Ole Miss.
Oh, yeah. No, I know. Is there any situation where they beat Georgia and they lose the East?
And Georgia loses the East?
Like if Tennessee beats Georgia?
I think, yes. I think if Ole Miss beats Georgia and Tennessee beats Georgia,
then they would have the head-to-head and they'd both be 2-loss team. I don't know what Tennessee's...
Tennessee would be 2 losses. They have 2 losses in the SEC, Alabama and Florida. Georgia would have 2 losses in the SEC. But the head-to-head would give the nod to Tennessee over Georgia.
Wouldn't that be something?
Isn't that something?
I thought Missouri had a... Oh, Missouri, that's another game. Where was that game played? In Athens. I do think that they played reasonably well against Georgia. But
they were in it for the whole game until the very, very end. And then Georgia scored again, making it 30-21.
Yeah, then yeah.
So that, I mean, yeah, give them props. They did beat Missouri, and I know it was in Athens, but a win's a win.
So I'm rooting for the chaos. I really am. I am rooting for the chaos. I think
I'm rooting for Oregon FSU and Texas to all lose, and then I won't have to worry about it. Tomorrow, who does Texas even play tomorrow? Probably some garbage team.
I have no idea.
They play TCU. Woo.
Is TCU even ranked anymore?
They're 4-5, just like Colorado, which was a big win for Oregon.
My.
Oh,
Imagine being that fan base. Like, imagine your fall from grace being we're in the college football national championship game, get absolutely embarrassed. Like, one of the worst championship games in my lifetime in any sport. And then you come back the following season. You lose to a Colorado team that won like 2 games the previous year. And I understand it was a completely different roster. But then you go on to lose multiple games, and your record now is a 4-5 team when literally in January you were in the college football playoff national championship game.
Isn't that something else?
I mean, talk about being humbled. I mean,
I think the championship game was their humbling.
God, I mean,
I've never seen such a blowout.
That's so bad. That's so bad. That game was over after like 3 minutes.
And Georgia players were eating chicken wings on the sideline in the third quarter.
I mean, apologies, TCU Nation. That the Horned Frogs got punished. What else can we say?
Cool. Can't play football though. But last year is an example. Their schedule got them into the college football championship, so schedule should matter.
I agree. I didn't disagree with it at the time.
I'm just saying. So all these people, well, you gave me Oregon. Well, schedule should matter. Oh, it should. Why did TCU make it last year?
My final thoughts.
I'll tell you why. Because they beat 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 ranked or 5 ranked teams.
I mean, yeah. I mean, they had a good, a good record. I mean, they had a good schedule.
They did.
But my final thoughts on it is, yeah, I'm just rooting for the chaos. And I think Alabama will show. I feel really good about Alabama right now. I feel like they are the team that was neglected all year. And by the way, Joel Klatt was giving them a ton of praise this week and saying that they're the team to fear right now in the CFB playoff picture. And I was,
he gave them a ton of praise, but he still put them at number 8. Come on.
Well, I mean, I just think that's just the politics of the situation right now.
The politics be damned. Alabama and Texas should be ranked higher than Oregon.
He's really high on Oregon. He's really high on Oregon.
Bo Nix is named Bo Picks because when he plays an SEC team, that's all he does is throw picks. Proof in the pudding. Last year against Georgia, 49-3. 2 interceptions. I don't want to hear, it was his first year. No.
Apparently that was his first year.
No. And they finished, and everybody's like, oh, Bo Nix is really good this year.
Oregon will have their chance to prove that they are worth the praise that they've been receiving this year.
They're not worth the praise. They've beaten 1 500 team.
We shall see.
1, Jacob.
But I want to switch to something else if we could real quick, Brant.
Okay, all right.
I wanted to get your take on something real quick.
I hope it
So it has been announced that there will be a live action Legend of Zelda film. And I think the producer, director, and writer have all been confirmed and announced. I don't have names at this time, but I think the writer was the same writer who did Jurassic World and a few other projects. And I don't know. First of all, first impression, a live action Zelda film. Would that ever be something you're interested in?
Nope.
I think I'm right there with you. It seems like an odd choice. You're taking a protagonist that doesn't speak in
Well,
any
they
game.
already mess up the lore when he speaks.
That's what I'm saying. Like, how are you gonna? Does this work? And I saw some. You know who Beat 'em Ups is on YouTube?
Yeah.
Are you familiar? He did.
Yeah.
I saw something that he posted where it was, I don't know if this is confirmed or just speculation, where Tom Holland was supposedly going to be cast as Zelda or Link, I
I
should
heard
say.
that.
So I don't know. I don't know. I really hope that they don't ruin this. You know what I mean? Like, I don't know. They some people have said that it's going to be more so like Peter Jackson's Lord of the Rings in terms of like what they're going for from a cinematic perspective, which sounds pretty cool.
Yeah.
But I don't see this working at all.
I don't. Every time I hear of a live action video game movie coming, I'm just like, well, I won't be seeing it because they never do it right.
Yeah, it's really hard for them to get it right. And I just feel like this is going to be another victim of that. Like if they ever made a live action Dragon Ball Z movie or something like that, I just feel like
they did. They made one. Yeah, it was Dragon Ball in like 2008, and it was garbage.
I know that. It's not surprising, and I know they made the Halo series that it was really bad.
Garbage.
Like in the first episode, from my understanding, and I may be wrong, but the first episode they had the Master Chief reveal his face and speak.
And he had a love interest. That's
yeah,
not
and he had
lore.
love interest or something like that. So, like, just totally off base from the character, from all the, every, be it book or be it game, totally off base from the character. So I don't know. I saw this news this week. I wanted to bring it up because I thought it was interesting. Want to get your thoughts on it. The Super Mario movie that they did, that was the animated movie. I saw parts of it. I haven't seen the whole thing through. I think it's okay. I don't think it's terrible, and I really like Jack Black as Bowser. I think he's sort of the standout performance, but it is still kind of like,
I would say that is a semi-outlier because that was very successful. A lot of people liked it, but I have no interest in seeing it.
But you know what else is similar? The Detective Pikachu movie, or the with
Detective Pikachu.
Ryan Reynolds, and that was not very well received, from my understanding.
The Pokemon looks stupid in it.
Yeah, they have ruined that franchise for me. I need to do a full episode on that, but we don't have time, obviously, tonight. But yeah,
that's why I still collect the cards.
Well, the cards are the only saving grace right now for the franchise. But anyway, I digress. I thought that was sort of interesting. I also wanted to bring up another thing because we were just talking about this the other night. Rockstar has announced that they will be showcasing the newest, and I quote directly, Grand Theft Auto game within the next few weeks. They are not calling it GTA 6 as of this moment. I do want to point that out. They were very specific in just saying the next Grand Theft Auto game. So we will get a preview of this game here in the next few weeks.
Jacob, I'm GTA'd out. I played that game with Shy and Greg for 3 years straight online, having fun, and I don't really care about the story. Having a crime story where I rob stuff and all that doesn't interest me. I did it for the online. I'm down with you.
I was about to say, here's my hot take on this, though. I don't really care about it.
I don't either.
And I know that, like, I understand that that's one of the most successful selling games and franchises of all time. But I just, like, ever since, like, Vice City, I just don't really care about it.
Yeah, I mean, the reason I loved GTA 5 at first was the online idea, because GTA 4 had online. It wasn't it was a big thing, but it wasn't massive like GTA 5 or Call of Duty per se. But I just remember it being fun. So I got GTA 5, wanting to play online, and I had my blast with it. It was everything I wanted. Then I got tired of it, and then I got microtransactions and all that stuff. The only time I ever played the story, Jacob, is because PlayStation Network went down for, I think it was hackers at the time. And I just did not care about the story. I know people, the story is great. It might be. To me, though, running around robbing banks and all that stuff, doing heists, it's fun online for a while, but story mode, I just didn't care that much.
Yeah, I think that's a very fair take. I think that's a very objective take. I think a lot of people, I think it suffers a lot from like the Legend of Zelda effect, where people just, it's GTA, so we have to praise it. It's like,
yeah,
I don't think that's necessarily the case.
Well, speaking of Legend of Zelda, I mean, it's going to be Game of the Year, and that's something else.
But see, I know, I don't necessarily disagree with that though. I really don't.
What do you think is going to beat it?
No, I mean, like, I think that it should be Game of the Year.
I just don't see anything else. I mean, yeah, I just don't see anything else.
Like, we didn't mention Alan Wake 2 when we talked about this before, and I think that's been received really well by the community that enjoys those types of games. But yeah, I'm with you. I just don't see anything else really contending, because a lot of the games that were these giant marquee games that were supposed to be these blockbusters have kind of fallen flat after just a few weeks.
Yeah.
And
well, Spider-Man and Baldur's Gate 3 are also in the running.
You know, I, having said that, though, I think Baldur's Gate 3 may have something to say about it. But like, I was mainly thinking of like Diablo 4 and Starfield.
Yeah.
Like, I don't think those games really lived up to what people were hoping they would be. So
surprisingly, Final Fantasy 16 is in the running. I really enjoyed that game. Do I think it's Game of the Year? No, but I really enjoyed that game.
Well, I mean, you know, we will have to wait and see. You know, the game that I'm looking forward to the most isn't really even it's DLC. I'm looking forward to Elden Ring DLC. Like, to me, that's the number one thing I want to see is Elden Ring DLC.
Yeah, that and Super Mario RPG coming out next week.
Yeah, I don't know if I need to be excited for this or not. I want to play it. And I've heard people say it's a great game, but I've also heard other people say it's not very good. So I don't know. I don't know what to make of it.
I don't either. I haven't been on the WoW hunt as of late. I don't want to hear. I just beat Dark Souls 3. I just beat Ghost of Tsushima. I don't know what to play.
You know what would be a fun a gaming series that we haven't seen in a while? It's Pokemon, but it's one of their spin-offs. We haven't seen a Mystery Dungeon game in a long time.
No, we haven't. We had a re-release on the Switch.
Yeah, and I fell in love with the series based on that game. I put so much time into it, and I loved it. I would love to see a new Mystery Dungeon game.
I would also love to see a Legend of Arceus, except in the Ho-Oh region.
Yeah, I would too. Yeah, I would too, for sure. Or Gen 5 remakes.
Oh, Jacob, if they made Gen 5 remakes, oh my.
I don't know why they wouldn't. I don't know why they would stop at Gen 4. I mean, that doesn't make sense. So hopefully we'll get those. Hopefully we'll get those.
You got me excited.
So there's a lot that they could do. What's been remarkable about the Pokemon franchise is just how much potential they have and how badly they F it up. So, I mean, we'll see. We will get for front row seats to how bad they can botch this franchise. We've already seen it firsthand with Scarlet and Violet. So,
wow.
Anyway, I can't believe I was able to work in a Pokemon rant this episode. This is great.
You know, the game-wise is disappointing, but the cards have been blessing my socks off.
Well, the cards have been, like I said, the only redeeming quality of the franchise. So, you know, up to this point, they've been very consistent throughout the entire franchise, which is good.
They have it, but yeah, Pokemon's really suffered lately.
But we are at time. Brant, I'll give you, as I always do, give you a final moment or two to conclude your thoughts, and then I will step in and end the episode for us.
In these wee hours of the night, as we look across the college football landscape, Saturday, November 11th, 2023 is a critical day of football, as is every Saturday of college football landscape. There's possible upsets of Miami over Florida State, Ole Miss over Georgia, and if we're lucky, we'll see Oregon fall as well. That being said, your college football playoff rankings right now should look like this: Georgia, Ohio State, Florida State, Washington, Michigan, Texas, Alabama, and then Oregon. And Jacob, with that, I give the mic to you.
So in your ideal situation, Alabama moves up one spot.
But Oregon moves down 2 spots. Alabama moves up 1.
Okay, fair enough. I think it'll all work itself out in the end. But as always, everybody, I want to say a huge thank you to everybody who listened to this episode, who's rated our podcast on the various platforms that we're on, who has supported our YouTube channel and dropped a subscription to us on there. And also, a lot of people that we've talked to, Brad, that have said that they've been watching the episode and whatnot, have been sharing it with other people in their life, and we greatly appreciate that as well. So word of mouth is also a great way to get to expand our audience and help us attract more viewers, and we greatly appreciate people who do that. And if you have any topic suggestions or ways we can improve the show, we're always looking for constructive criticism or ways that we can do something better. So send that our way, as well as those topic suggestions. You can email us at humilitypodcast@gmail.com. And our links to our social media are in every single episode on every single platform that we post. So you can find us on there as well. Brantley does a great job at keeping up with that for us. So thank you. I know it gets exhausting hearing that all the time, but we greatly do appreciate each and every one of our listeners, and we couldn't do it without you.
Indeed.
So with all of that said, we will sign out here, and we will be back and better than ever next week.
Peace! Thanks for listening to the In Our Humble Opinion podcast. Be sure to subscribe wherever you heard this podcast so you never miss a future episode. If you have any comments on today's episode, or if you'd like to suggest topics for future episodes, connect with your hosts at humilitypodcast@gmail.com. We'll see you next time.